Welcome to this edition of Security and Compliance Weekly. We are very excited to have back on the show today Mr. John Threat. He was on the show, I think, back in February, episode 62, if I'm not mistaken, and he was telling us about his origin story of being an OG hacker back in the early days of the internet and computing and networking, all those things. He actually reached out to me a couple weeks ago, and he's said he wanted to voice some of his concerns about sort of the state of cybersecurity today, the state of the industry, how nobody seems to think like a hacker anymore. And so here we are. We invited him back on the show. I'm looking forward to hearing what John's take is on the state of the industry. And everybody else has, I'm sure, got some things to add. So, and also, please, if you want to join us on the Discord server and add questions and comments, we'll be happy to try to pull them into the air as well. So let's have a conversation with John Threat. Join us as we continue our journey of tearing down silos and building bridges on Security and Compliance Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. And now, it's the show that bridges the requirements of regulations, compliance, and privacy with those of security. Your trusted source for complying with various mandates, building effective programs, and current compliance news. It's time for Security and Compliance Weekly.
Welcome to episode 97 of Security and Compliance Weekly, recorded on November 30th, 2021. I am your host, Mr. Jeff Mann, and joining me today are my esteemed co-host, Ms. Kat Valentine, Ms. Johanna Baum, and Mr. Frederick Lee. Welcome, everyone.
Hola.
Just have one announcement before we jump into our topic and guest spot for today. And along the lines of topics and guests, if you have any ideas or suggestions for a specific guest that you'd like us to talk to or a topic you'd like us to cover on this or any of our shows, you can submit your suggestions by going to securityweekly.com/guests. You will find there a form, fill it out, we review it. We'll get back to you if we like your idea and let you know how to proceed from there. Alrighty, we are winding down on the year. Today is the last day of the fiscal year for my company, Online Business Systems. So it's like New Year's Eve, only a month early for me. Anyway, it just means management's distracted doing a lot of numbers and everything. So they're probably not watching today. Not that I'd say anything disparaging or anything like that. But I do want to welcome back John Threat to the show. John, welcome.
Hi. Great to be back.
It's great to have you back. I was listening to your segment from back in February, and just to sort of refresh my memory of what we had talked about and things that we had covered. And one of the obvious things is, because you've been on the show already, we've already asked you the hot seat question. So I wanted to ask you a different question just to start off, just as an icebreaker question. But what is your favorite hacker movie?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think it's Sneakers. It's a cross between Sneakers and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Ooh. Well, I was hoping you'd say Sneakers. And Paul, if you're listening, that's another one for my leaderboard.
Sneakers is the right answer.
Series,
Sneakers is the right answer.
I need to follow up on that. They were developing it as a TV series. I mean, Sneakers was dope. I actually have never seen Hackers, even though, did I mention Hackers the last time? So, and when they were filming so first of all, Hackers is like semi-based on the hacker group I was in. Right. I didn't get any money for it. In fact, some people I know talked to the writer and they didn't get any money. And then when I got out of jail, the day I got out of jail, I come onto the train platform and I look across in the G train station in Brooklyn, and they were filming Hackers. And there I was like watching a movie that was loosely based, including some hacker names from our group. there. So
I think, are you represented in the movie Hackers? Having not seen it,
Lord Nikon is supposed to be. I've never seen it. I've only read the script and stuff, and it's like based on our group. And it's funny. Somebody was asking me. I was trying to find this hacker today from back in the day, and it came up in discussion that our group was like the only polyglot group in the whole hacker sphere at that time. That was like, it had like different ethnicities from different continents. And also we had, women in our group. And I think that like, besides all the oddities, besides MOD, the hacker, one of the hacker groups I was in, right. That was like a standout point, which at the time when it happened, everyone looked at as a negative, unfortunately, or pointed it out. I mean, some of those same people now would be embarrassed that they pointed it out in a negative light, but turned out to be extra dope historically that we had all these great members.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of cool when you look back on it, and unfortunately, even somewhat pervasive still today is the lack of diversity that we sometimes find in our community. I don't know if that's what ground you want to cover today, but I was just going to let you open it up with what's been triggering you lately, John.
But let's go back to the movie real quick. So Sneakers is your favorite. The rest of the panel, though. Sorry, I just want to know.
Sneakers all day, every day. Sneakers is always the right answer.
Nice.
I'm still trying to get that phone number from Sneakers T.
Nice.
Kat, how about you?
Definitely, I was down with both of the movies that you suggested. You should watch Hackers at some point, though. It's pretty funny.
Gotcha. I'll check it out. I mean, I know I had the script and everything. Like I'm saying, somebody I know talked to them. I literally had the script. It's just painful to come out of jail and see that. And they're like,
no, totally. But maybe enough time has passed that you could watch it and laugh at it, because it is pretty hilarious, especially in 2021.
Gotcha. I will check it out one day and get fucked up.
All right, Joe, let us know a little about yourself. What's your favorite hacker movie?
Yeah, I'm the same with Sneakers. I actually watched it with my dad, what feels like a million years ago. So I'm on board with that one.
That's kind of because it came out a million years ago.
Well, I think one of the things about Sneakers,
myself.
I think one of the things that Sneakers is great is because, and this doesn't really exist, right? A lot of times they roll everything into one person, into a super hacker who, also can fight and everything and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And, has all these different skills. That might be me, actually, since I do know how to ride motorcycles but anyway, that's besides the point. The main thing is that it's probably more congruent to reality that a lot of times groups form with different strengths within the group. And it's this polyglot group of people that share ideas, almost like in the modern day DAO situation. Those hacker groups sort of come together. And I think Sneakers represents that, both in terms of age, skills. And, I think that is great, the mentorship. And that's missing in other movies where it's just about, one person is some sort of mega hacker and there's nothing they don't have to reference anything. So I think that's what's great about it. And then I think I like, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because for me, I definitely, have dipped into before in one epoch of my life, I definitely lived as more of a dirty cyberpunk, surviving on just my hacker wits and stuff. So, and I think that exists in the world too. And there's not enough of those stories. A lot of it, like I said, unfortunately, there's so many fucking great stories out there and stuff. But a lot of times, they get boiled down into tropes that are really fucking boring.
If only there was some podcast that could put together a series of hacker stories or the untold stories. Oh, wait, there is one. Darknet Diaries. Have you been on Darknet Diaries?
No. I think I've heard about it. It's only so many hours in a day. I'll check it out though.
We need to get you on so you can tell your story on there. We know some people. We'll make sure you connect. Although they're on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn. I'm not sure how to make that alignment, but we'll figure it out. You were saying, John? I'm sorry. What is triggering?
Oh yeah, no. I think that is. I think that's a. I think in the landscape, it's just a lot of stories, and I think it's been hard for them to translate the stories. The other thing too about the story thing, which I know intimately, since part of my career has delved into film and television, and in pitching shows, is that embarrassingly enough, you're not going to believe this. You're going to know it once I say it. A lot of producers who have a big name and do shows, when they pitch a hacker show, they feel like they know everything about hacking already. So they don't actually want to collaborate with any hackers and stuff. So I think it's funny. That's like a common problem, that they feel like they know everything from just reading a few Wired magazine articles. And like I said, then it just reverts to, to a trope that feels comfortable. And ultimately that winds up being boring because it's not really reality. There's so much texture in the underground and in the, in the myriad of different, hacking, security breaches and hacking and even the intangible hacking, and also obviously nation state stuff too, which is also ongoing and incredible in its evolution. Oh, and don't forget crypto too, which is also a whole realm.
And by crypto, you mean, of course, cryptography and encryption, not that other thing, right?
No, I mean like cryptocurrencies and blockchain. I think that's incredibly.
I know that's what you meant.
And I think that has evolved into a whole industry, a whole security industry in itself. I think it's interesting. I think a lot of those people are really smart and sharp. And, I think one of my laments is that I think a lot of old school hackers actually don't like blockchain. They still think it's like tulips or a database. Might be, but that's not the point. The point is that it's, there's a culture around it and a lot of, there's a lot of money, data, and other assets being put on the blockchain that are at stake. And it's, it's high stakes and it's very exciting and it's international in scope. So I don't know. It's just funny to talk to some people who are like, I don't even fuck with that. And you're like, yo, this is the hottest shit out, including on the hacker side. And I do understand a lot of the technology behind it or coding. That's a lot to jump into if you want to get into like Rust or Solidity or the other various technologies and stuff. But it's a lot to explore and hammer away at. And like I said, there already has been some amazing incidents.
Well, I don't want to go that route, at least not on this show. I do think it's interesting that, we've started out talking about, favorite hacker movie and sort of the personas of hackers back in the day, the way they've been portrayed, the way they really are, and just even talking about how there's so many stories out there, and yet they often get turned into tropes. When you first approached me about, I want to get back on the show and let's talk about how there's something missing, there's something going on. It's like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said something to the effect of, it's like too many people aren't thinking like a hacker anymore, or we've lost something in terms of sort of the hacker mentality, hacker methodology. What are your thoughts?
Right. So actually, I was trying to lead in with the crypto talk because those guys are impressive.
Oh, well, then do that then.
But
I was trying to avoid crypto.
Oh, no, we're going to avoid it. I just was dovetailing that. I think that a lot of those guys are on the cutting edge on the people who are evolving their security skills in that space. So one of the things is because it's raw. So on the other side of it, let me start by saying, of course, the expansion of all things, digital, everything from IoT to the web to devices, phones, computers, televisions, everything, refrigerators, light switches. I think, Web 2, Web 3, the myriad, it just has increased exponentially. Gaming, streaming, blah, blah. The depth is incredible. Metaverse. I think, of course, you're going to need to hire as many security people as possible to fulfill roles. The thing is, and it's, this is stuff is not, that part I'm not treading new ground on. What I wanted to mention, though, is that unfortunately in doing so, so many people don't really have a grasp of the hacker situational awareness. But what I mean by that is, like, for instance, in the interplay of people who come up through actually like hacking, right? A lot of times, both friendly and not friendly, one of the biggest shames is getting hacked. Like, if you wind up getting hacked, or one of the biggest calls is hacking other people. And, of course, there's competitions and stuff like that, but there's an innate sense of the real embarrassment when you either get hacked or you hack someone, that gives you a sort of pride and situational awareness about the security of either your data or the data you're working on or working with. And that might seem like an abstract concept, but I do feel like I see that lacking in a lot of people coming through the security mill. Like, it is very hard to teach that. And it's something, it's not like innate, but like if you come into it without the idea of that awareness about the data, you wind up, not missing the mark, I think. And then to give examples, obviously, since the last time we talked, there's been huge breaches. I would even say there's been some breaches I would consider some of the biggest hacks in history took place. And I think about how the one thing I think that is really, really why I was going to speak about this and formulating my thoughts on this is that not only were these intrusions huge, but a huge difference is that they were inside the computers and systems for a long ass time, which is something I like to do. But that being said, it is amazing that it could go on that long with a full staff or a company on Overwatch. So something's wrong if we went from like, oh, there was an intrusion, it was big, but they caught it within 2-3 days or a week, to like 6 months, 1 year, full exposure, doing whatever they wanted to do at will, and only caught because there was, an advisory, and then they went over everything. Or they dumped the data, when they felt like it. I think something changed to me in the air that allowed for that to happen. And I think one aspect of it is this ethereal thought about how do you teach someone true hacker awareness, to take that sort of interest in that, your name is on the line, or in the sense of being aware of the thing, like a piece of software or or a service isn't enough. You have to have awareness about what's going on in your systems enough to know that when something is wrong or changed, or even just take a look or have that sense like, yo, something's not right, and take a look. I think that is a missing element. I think that defines the difference between people who are really amazing and have an amazing team, and people who have, a team that does his job really well till they don't. And then you realize, oh shit, nobody was paying attention at all.
So I'm intrigued about several things, just based on what you're saying. One thing is, because I live in the compliance world, and PCI is almost its own beast, despite the fact that it supposedly lives within this community. I've talked for the last couple of years about how the paradigm of the attacker has changed. How it used to be back in the early days that it was all about getting shell access, getting root on servers, entrenching yourself, finding ways to, we have language for it now, pivoting and lateral movement and stuff like that. But the general thinking of the early days was break in, search until you find the mother lode of data that you want to steal, and then figure out how to get it out. Whereas the breaches that have impacted at least the PCI space, the retail payment space, the last couple years, have been more sort of automated attacks, malware attacks, things that have enabled hackers not necessarily to get in and entrench themselves, but to be able to exfiltrate data over time at a trickle. I'm intrigued that you're suggesting some of the latest breaches, some of these big breaches, the nature of them hadn't changed from the old days. It was still somebody got in and was there for a long time and learned the environment and found out what was the best thing to steal and the best way to do it and that type of thing. I'm tempted to say you don't see a lot of that anymore. And I would temper that by saying at least the focus doesn't seem to be on that. Isn't the only problem these days ransomware? Isn't that what companies are supposed to worry about?
They should be worried about ransomware. It's amazing the evolution of it and how successful they have been in getting people to wind up locking their systems up. It's
right.
And I think it also once again points to, and believe me, I do see companies responding to it strongly, right? I think they have moved very strongly to find partners to, make sure it doesn't happen again. But obviously,
right.
Everybody got caught, stung. A lot of places had no idea. And of course, this is, like I said, just to temper it. Of course, if you have a law, it's easy to say that running, a small organization and stuff. But, there are large organizations that haven't been stung by it. But, it can be hard to manage everybody effectively. And if you don't take security seriously or even stay up on the different vectors, obviously, all it takes is one person to wind up getting the whole organization stung with ransomware. I think that is, there's a lot of reasons for that. But obviously we're just trying to spitball, ideas from a high cliff view of like what could be done to sort of alleviate some of those things. And I think part of it is definitely that a lot of people, as I mentioned, don't really have a good, hacker awareness. I think it's interesting that I've met people, just who on the street who are more like concerned about their personal privacy and data protection than some of the security people I've met, who are in charge of data. Like, what? Like, I wish you had this guy's sort of mentality, not necessarily to be paranoid, but like, I think, I do think to some extent, there's obviously, we talked about this before, there's an extreme lack of education in like, I think this is a hard thing to find money for is, just to, because there's several barriers in terms of like just education of like young people in protecting their personal data. So if they do evolve eventually to a security role, they already have some sort of sense of the protection of it. But I do think in general, like, I feel like there's like, there's not in a way, I'm almost going to say like, and this is, you can't control, is like, if somebody feels it's just their job, I think that's the difference between like old school hackers. Not when I say old school, I should actually just say hackers in general, is that when they do evolve to a security role, for them, it's personal if they get hacked. Whereas I'm not sure if that's instilled in people who, who come into it more because it has a high paycheck rather than necessarily a love or of defense of the data they've been put in charge of. If that seems, that's a pretty easy conclusion, but I'm just, my goal is to figure out how to present ideas to change that thinking.
JT, you kind of touched on one of the things that was kind of, at least my controversial theory, which is I think money in the industry has actually changed things for people in the industry. There are those who are like, it used to be that the knowledge itself was the reward. Like, hey, what you learn, like, effectively playing the game was the reward. Now the reward is how big is the paycheck you can get. And so are you even incentivized to even care about, either, exploring, security even further, learning about things outside of what is your immediate job, and even more so even caring about whether or not you actually get popped. It's like now, you can get popped and you still get a job. You just walk across the street, you still actually get the same job, and it doesn't really matter. I'm kind of curious, like, how do you feel like effectively the corporatization of security, how that actually has changed the profile of security practitioners?
Take it out of security.
Sorry.
You don't even have to just, restrict it to security. There's just a general level of apathy altogether with people in their jobs. I mean, I don't think they're really feeling associated or responsible, or like you're saying, like I should feel more responsible for the data that I control and this level of protection that they're supposed to have just being a good security practitioner. I don't think they give a shit. I mean, they just keep getting a paycheck, so they have a moderate level of care. But I mean, I think it's across the board for almost every position that there's just that, the last several years. I mean, when we talk about, sneakers and what we used to do, I think we just grew up in an era where we wanted that intellectual curiosity. We're digging because we liked it. It was fun. We wanted to learn more and evolve. It's just not the same mentality now. I mean, it is something that they do, and they're going to, most people are doing it for the minimum amount of effort possible to still get that same maximum paycheck. As soon as that shifts, I'm just going to go get a job somewhere else and do the same thing. Like, why do I have to care? Which sounds horrible. I mean, we should shift to how are we going to make this better? But I think that's just kind of the general law of the land now. I don't love it. I hate that. But that's what it feels like.
Agreed, 100%. I think that, so one of the questions is how do what ideas could change that? I mean, I do think, that maybe everyone, they're going to kill me for saying they're over incentivized. I know it's the desire for someone to do security for all these everywhere is high, and they should get people, but also maybe to the point where it's over incentivized. Far be it from me to say they should cut anyone's money, but I do think, to some extent, there has to be some ideas about that. Because I mean, that both of what you said, I mean, that's exactly what's in my head too. Like it makes me wonder talking to people. And then like one of the things I love to do is I love to go on Clubhouse into computer security rooms. And, it's nice that everybody's helping each other, but I also hear everybody sort of helping each other get security jobs, and they haven't put any time into the actual practice of it. You know what I mean? They just enough to get the test done, or, or pass the resume test. But that also said, I've also seen a lot of people, and it's easy to dump on Clubhouse because it is a home of a lot of people. It's a good place for non-experts to go to gain an audience. I've gone on there, and I don't want to say any names, but I've definitely gone in rooms and trolled a little bit just to see what they were thinking. And man, there was some people with huge audiences, and man, they really had bad ideas about computer security. I won't expose anybody directly, but it's one of my favorite pastimes.
Kat, do you have any thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I just was listening or whatever, and I'm thinking about it. And I'm kind of the mind. I've thought about this quite a bit, and I'm kind of the mindset. Correct. We're about the same age, and I think that we came up in the same kind of 90s genre. And there is. I'm kind of thinking like there is a difference, right, between hackers that came from that time. I'm wondering if it's a time capsule kind of thing, because at that time, we didn't have things like jobs and careers that we could go for. The only incentive was curiosity or getting somebody, like kind of a deal. And there wasn't too many of those jobs. That wasn't really a recognized field. It might be the same, like synonymous with an engineer, just your typical engineer who's one's really, really great and has been doing it since they were 6. versus somebody that went to school for it, kind of thing. Maybe that's something that can't be taught. Maybe an entire culture can't be taught. That's kind of where my thoughts are going right now, but I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you're saying is enlightening. I think that all right. The only thing I would say is that I do think culture can be taught. I think that got excised at a certain point because once it became, it just wasn't, I mean, I've observed people, training people, even though that wasn't ever my forte. It's not training people per se, at least not in, you know what I mean? In the mill sort of way. I've seen that. I've looked at the documents. I review them time to time. Obviously, I know a lot of people who do security, full time, all the time. And, listen, there's a lot of money to be made in it. I'm not trying to, cut anybody's knowledge on that. I think what I'm trying to say is that, I think what could be added to it is these ideas. I do think, culture could be taught. It's just, it's not included in those briefings. I think some of them are wrong in the sense that it does allow people to just rely on, products and services and, some dings.
Yeah.
I'm
almost kind of the mindset though that I'm kind of the mindset that it's like almost who you are. So how I came into the hacking culture was I was a 14, 15, 16-year-old runaway, bad household and all that kind of stuff. And I came into phone freaking first because I needed free phone calls from payphones because I had a beeper and I was selling weed and that was how I was making money, to be really honest about it. And so I fell in with, some folks that could teach me that stuff, and it was interesting, but that was kind of my way of getting into this whole world, which then later became, as I grew up, a whole career, And so in my mind, I kind of think of it more like some people have that bug. Maybe some people came from some sort of struggle. Maybe some people came from some sort of intellectual curiosity, maybe not necessarily with that particular struggle, but it seems like it's almost an attitude,
All right. So first, cheers to you for living the
Thanks.
I appreciate your origin story a lot. I didn't know that, and I'd love to know more. So one of the things though hitting upon that is imagination, right? One of the most telling things in the 9/11 report was the failure of imagination. Imagination is super important. It's how we got here. It's how we have all the things, how we make things, how we do things. It's that imagination. Even as a child, there's nothing better than a child with unrestricted imagination. And there's nothing worse than a child who was robbed of their imagination. What I do think is, just building on that, is the idea of that creative imagination is a failure completely, both in teaching comp security as well as inside of organizations. I can't speak to all organizations. I know, I'm connected to some people who, their shit is fucking tight. Just want to give props to the people who shit is tight. They run a tight fucking shit. Just want to give the props to that, because I do feel like sometimes we don't take a minute to recognize what's really good. Right. Now, it's obvious not every organization can replicate that, but it's that creative imagination that is missing, both being taught, and that's probably true in a lot of places, which, by the way, once again, I just want to reel back to the DAO thing. I know it's a buzzword, but distributed autonomous organizations, as people set them up, what's interesting is that they celebrate creative imagination within the group and try to reward it and incentivize it within it, both using programmatic tools as well as just good faith between everybody in a very game theory 3-3 sort of way. But that being said, all right, that's not there yet for security. But how does one get there to do it? I mean, I'd love to hear just spitballing ideas right now.
I got an idea, and it's actually partially inspired by Kat's origin story, your origin story. I think a lot of us, for lack of a better word, like older people in the community. I think one of the things that actually sparked like some of the things that you talk about, JT, was people using these skills for their personal life, right? Like there was a need that Kat had, there was a need that you had, there was a need that I had when we actually got into security. That wasn't about money. Well, I mean, it was, but not really, right? It was about like some kind of access, some kind of freedom, some kind of change to your personal life. And the security skills were actually a tool that you had that actually helped you with that. Had nothing to do with a job. Whereas I think now people are kind of picking up the skills just to get a job, right? It has nothing to do with like with their personal life or anything that they actually are living and breathing. And and kind of like you were saying when you met that person on the street who was like just super hyper aware about their personal privacy, what they actually want to do with their data. They had some kind of personal story. They had something in their life that made that important to them. And I wonder if there are other things that we should be pushing for. And I know we talked a little bit about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, et cetera. When you think about like Silk Road and some of those things, at the end of the day, that was fundamentally people actually just had a need and they were actually trying to solve that. And so they were thinking, outside the box. And when I think about creativity and imagination, restriction helps push that. Like, hey, there are certain laws, there are certain things, there's certain, societal, cultural norms or whatever that people are feeling confined by. So they're pushing and finding other avenues, being creative. And I feel like some of that's actually missing from the security community now.
I agree. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'll actually say something too, with regards to my origin story. That's just like some stuff that happened when I was 14, 15, 16. But I'll also say this. It wasn't my first time messing with computers or phones. My father in the 80s, he definitely had like a Tandy 1000 that he gave me and a TI 99. And I also they had like a home business and I had my own phone line since I was 8. And so I was messing around back then, but then when it came down to need 14, 15, 16, I had some sort of, okay, if I connect with some people, I can maybe get some phone calls for free. And while I'm on this street by this payphone, maybe I can hit up an AT&T conf and like be entertained for a couple of hours. But I would also argue that because you presented the argument that was kind of out of necessity. It was also out of intellectual curiosity as well. I'll say that for myself. But with people coming into, maybe younger people coming into the field, maybe getting a job in this field, I've seen it a lot of times where that is their necessity. They're like, you know what? I have a little bit of skills with computers. And I've been in tech support or an admin or something like that for a little bit. Maybe I can up this to better my life situation. And I would argue that might be a very hacker mindset getting into the field.
It is. And I'm not going to hate on that at all. Like I am one of those annoying people on Twitter and I love following all these people. It's like, hey, I'm trying to get this money. I'm trying to get this bag. This is what I want to do. This is what the paychecks look like in cybersecurity. I am here for that. I'm not hating on anybody trying to get paid. But I do think that because some of the resources that they're using are resources from commoditized security, that maybe some of their avenues aren't as broad as some of the things, people actually maybe came up earlier where the commoditization of security just didn't exist. So people literally just making up as they went along, right? And so I think some of that's actually kind of missing, maybe actually the environmental pressure for people to actually be creative, right? Like right now, the environmental pressure is like, hey, get the cert, get the paycheck, which is awesome. But it only means that you're just learning the stuff in that book or the stuff related to that. And that's how you end up in the situations where somebody's like, hey, you know what? I don't even know what that server is. I don't even know. I don't even, they don't even know some of the fundamentals about maybe, some of the things that we kind of take for granted now. because all they're being taught is, hey, how do you, do the search in Splunk? Hey, how do you get this scan set up? How do you do X, Y, and Z? And I'm not hating on any of that, but it is, I think to some extent, it's kind of limited some of the cultural aspects. When I think about security and I think about, hackers, it's all about kind of that aggressive, that aggressive hunt for knowledge, right? And you can get paid without trying to learn anything else except for what's on paper, right?
Right.
Yeah,
checklist. By the way.
Go ahead, John. I'm sorry. Does it still power up?
Yeah, it does.
And does it run Windows ME?
No, I don't have anything modded on it. I just love it raw.
Cool.
I didn't use that. I didn't use that from I got this post. I don't know if I never stopped hacking, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I didn't use this for. I got this way after, but it works.
Cool. Hey, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and keep this discussion going. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
We're proud to announce CISO Stories, a new podcast series in partnership with Cybersecurity Collaborative and Cyber Reason. CISO Stories features the candid perspectives and experiences of frontline senior security executives and dives deep into timely security topics. CISO Stories is hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy at Cybersecurity Collaborative, and Sam Curry, Chief Product and Security Officer at Cyber Reason. Listen weekly as they speak with extraordinary CISOs by visiting securityweekly.com/CSP.
Welcome back to Security and Compliance Weekly. Hey, a couple of announcements. In an overabundance of caution, we have decided to flip this year's Security Weekly Unlocked to a virtual format, in case you hadn't heard. Safety of our listeners and hosts is our number one priority, of course, and we're going to be missing seeing you all in person, but we still want you to join us. It will now be called Security Weekly Unlocked Virtual. It's going to take place on Thursday, December 16th, one day only. It'll be 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Register for free, securityweekly.com/unlocked. Also coming up, that'll be like Thursday, December 2nd. Our next live webcast is going to focus on what's under the XDR hood. You go to securityweekly.com/webcast, register. You can also check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Alrighty. Back to the discussion. So many thoughts. Somebody whispered in my ear over one of our channels that because this is a security and compliance show, someone suggested that compliance is perhaps a significant factor in what, among other things, is sort of killing that sort of corporate and even personal, I guess, curiosity to discover and to imagine what can go wrong, therefore trying to protect it and keep it safe. Joe, would you like to expand on that in the form of a question for our esteemed guest?
I can do that. Yeah, I mean, As we're talking about it, and I think we've all agreed how important that intellectual curiosity is and the ability to unleash that, to dig and uncover. But do we think, and I know you've talked about this before, that check the box mentality, the amount of budget associated with compliance and security is really limiting that ability to be curious? That we're forcing, do we think that we are forcing with compliance regulations and that check the box mentality? Are we forcing the shutdown of that curiosity or the ability for them to really unleash more of that, that passion and drive for the actual core security values that we grew up with? Question for the group.
For the group or for John?
For John, yeah, take it, John.
Well, me, like, for instance, like, this isn't like, if I had my druthers, for instance, and I was in a place and it didn't have like, and it's building a team, I'd be like probably forced, I'd be asking people to politely and fun, like join some like localized CTF stuff or something like, some kind of like internal, battle just to like have fun, replicate networks and stuff. I think it depends on what we're doing. But I think like you want to keep it fun. You want to keep it, I do agree with you. Like sometimes the compliance and filling out forms and the restrictive nature of, access to things and the data. I think, yeah, of course, the compliance can definitely kill that thing. But I think there's other things you could do to invite people, within the time that you have as employees to make sure it's fun to continue to, learn and expand. And I know that sometimes organizations can get really taxed in the amount of stuff they do. But like I actually am one of the organizations I advise is Visions 2030. And actually one of the things they do is come into corporate places and institutions too, and universities to like help their team take time to imagine, to just sort of like meditate and then give them exercises to imagine. And it's amazing how little time is left in most organizations just for that kind of brainstorming. I mean, I know there's like sort of like the ESG movement in corporate, like sort of like the environmental social governance thing, which once again, it's funny that ESG in big corporations is sort of meeting DAOs, like the idea of like, you know what I mean? That like, we want employees to feel more comfortable by, with these elements that, the company's doing good. There's a social aspect to it, and governance, you have say over what creamer is in the refrigerator. But like, I think like you want, like for security though, you would want to create, to me, just spitballing ideas, events inside the company that allow people to have fun while learning in addition to, their regular duties for compliance. And of course, just whatever their role is in the security apparatus at that company.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, oh, sorry, Jeff. One
ahead, Jeff.
Quick point. I definitely think it's our responsibility to advocate for that curiosity and the percentage of work that should be done focused on, that check the box compliance, because it is required, but that's a minimum mandate. We should allow that freedom and continue to pound on, leadership, clients, whichever end of the spectrum you're on, for your team to have that space to be able to be curious and to dig and to learn and, to be inspired. It does take a lot more time, but it produces a lot more results. I think it's the education that, we and maybe just the old school mentality have. It's our responsibility to continue to advocate for that, so our teams do have space to do those things. So I completely agree. Sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay. I mean, I don't disagree with the assertion that there are things like compliance that are stifling what needs to be happen. I certainly see that in my day job and in my side job. And one of the reasons why we have this show, that's security and compliance. But what I have always struggle with is this paradox that I see, that on one side of the room, you have people bitching and complaining that compliance is limiting them and keeping them from doing the real tasks at hand, that it's an annoyance and a bother and an expense. And yet organizations that feel that way, that I assess and that I encounter, are essentially trying to do less than what the compliance is requiring, or for, there's no apparent other thing that they're trying to do, and they struggle with trying to demonstrate that they're doing what most people concede as compliance is sort of the bare minimum, the table stakes, the entry level, just the bare bones. I see that as an issue of how compliance has been presented to the world, to organizations, by countless people that are responsible for that role. And I used to just blame auditors, and I used to blame the accounting firms that get into the business. But Joe has helped me to think more open-mindedly about people with an accounting background. But I still see there's a disconnect between what compliance is and what it was intended to be and what it should be. And for lack of compliance, outside of nation states and the government and companies that have had to do it forever for regulatory reasons, like financial services and banks and things like that, maybe some insurance companies, most companies out there, organizations, really struggle with what to do with security. They know they need to do better. They know they should be doing something, but they're they're looking for a checklist. They're looking for a compliance. Just tell us what we need to do. What's the bare minimum? I mean, we had a conversation a couple weeks ago with the Sagers from CIS. The CIS has the top 20, and they only have 20 because they think that's what people can absorb. Not the 350 to 400 requirements that are in PCI, or the some number of requirements that are in the NIST cybersecurity framework, or the this, that, or the other. Where I see the frustration is in the lack of creativity and the lack of imagination. Hackers aren't, people that are doing these roles aren't thinking like hackers, but I also see the limitations on the hacker sides of not always realizing what all the restrictions are, and the permutations and the parameters and the limitations and the constraints that organizations necessarily have to follow. I think it's a big mess, personally.
Right. It's funny you say that,
out, John.
That's probably why I love the crypto so much, because it's so unregulated. So both in terms of like I said, both on the amazing, complex heist, which remind me of the old days, combined with both the, unrestricted multiple prong attacks for finding and getting the money back or not. But it's a lot. It's textured, but I do think that ultimately, like, let me give you a metaphor that's probably terrible. But we have walked by like a junkyard, and they got like a sign up there, but the sign is not what gets you the checklist. What gets you is a beautiful dog, junkyard dog, just growling, checking every inch, pacing the fence, looking around, goes under cars, looks everywhere. He's hungry. He looks at every fucking inch of that fucking junkyard. You go in there, he's going to tear your ass up. He's going to catch you. He sees you. He smells you. That's what you want, right? The checklist is cool, but you want to hire that person that's like a pit bull prowling everything, or multiple pit bulls, or just any breed of dog, actually. Chihuahuas work too.
Chihuahuas work too. Well, I'll say, something that happened to me this year so far is like compliance and stifling creativity, right? Like, my professional life is compliance, but I have this history, came up as a hacker. So when you get me as an employee, as a compliance employee, internal security kind of thing, I put all those skills on the table in the interview. So I make sure that I'm trying to get to the right place, a place that actually does want to do security. And like me doing compliance just means that I know what the rules are. But hey, I'm a generalist and I can do some other stuff too. So this year, I thought I found one of those companies. And one of the things that, and so it's my, month one or whatever. And I do this little scan or whatever, hey, is our company, something we're not doing right now, is our company's name being mentioned on the dark net at all? Or in these different Telegram, Discord, etc. groups that I'm scraping that are threat actors? Let's take a little search. Because they expected a compliance person, even with all this stuff, the compliance kind of hindered creativity there. And it wasn't even all that creative. It was just like normal, what I would do if I, just looking for, are we on anyone's radar kind of stuff. Got in trouble for it. I mean, so it's and decided later on, you know what, this is not the company for me after a couple of instances of stuff like that, where I'm not even scanning the company's resources themselves. I'm just taking a look to see if we're in anybody's mouth, right? Are we on anyone's radar? And totally got in trouble for doing something like that because I'm the compliance lady. Just go concern yourself with our PCI and our SOC 2 stuff and our privacy stuff and just do that. And that's it.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies don't want a freaking actual somebody that knows what they're doing in a lot of different realms,
Yeah. And to add to that, I would say that that's part of it too. I mean, when I'm talking about the hacker awareness, situational awareness, I think that extends all the way up the ladder. Like a lot of, they don't have a lot of good sense about it. Definitely, you know what I mean? I've run into, people, like, get out. But I think, and it wasn't about the actual work. Their ideas about security are wrong in every way.
Yeah,
they don't understand it and have invested no time into it. And that could be okay, but I do think extending the culture to that would be good. I mean, I have, like one of the personal beefs that I continuously have is not a beef, but one thing I notice is that I often see, like, this is an aside, but it makes sense because some of these people read articles and sometimes the articles are by journalists and then journalists are not hackers. And then I look at what they're writing and they're writing an abstraction of an idea that is, sourced by someone, the information they took as sacrosanct is an abstraction of a bad idea by someone in security who either might not be even that good, or B, they're writing ideas that apply to one thing, or that idea is now outdated because people figured out a ton of shit besides that. And then and I feel like that's one interesting effect that I've seen. And then you have people who make decisions, encapsulate those brief moments from a journalist as some kind of, as a directive, as a way to run, to ask of other security professionals. And that also kills,
coincidentally,
creative.
Last week's episode, John, we actually interviewed a cybersecurity journalist, and had a very different conversation, obviously, but not to stick up for journalists. I hear what you're saying, but they do have the opportunity to bring a somewhat objective observation or perspective to some of the things that we're talking about, where there's the fight between the hackers, the security side of folks, the compliance side of folks, the IT side of folks, that type of thing. I mean, I've worked with many clients. I'm sure you guys have had similar experiences, either companies you've worked for or worked on behalf of, where some level of management, like the CEO, read about some whiz bang blinky light product and said, damn it, we got to have one of these things. And there it sat. Everybody's staring at it like, yeah, we don't know what to do with it, but we have to have it. because that's solving all of our security problems and creating a whole lot more hassle for us at the same time. I mean,
Also,
am I alone in this?
I'm not bagging on journalists directly. I think part of it
Right.
is like not so much like me blaming journalists per se. It's more about like, you could have an article out. And I think what I want to get at is more on the creative side, the fact that things change so fast in security. You could read an article a week ago and that thing is no longer relevant. So, and that's not on the journalists. What I'm saying is more people extracting stuff from journalists per se, and then mistaking that as like as some sort of document to go by, when it's not. It's not so much that I think there's some incredible security journalists. I just meant more in the nature of like this ever-changing landscape that, like I said, it changes from week to week. What was true, earlier this year, I don't think is true as per, I mentioned some of the huge hacks this year, and the nature of those penetrations and how long they went on and how, invasive they were. I think that, so a lot of the stuff that people talk about and bandy about is old, and they're extracting it from various places, I think. And obviously things have gotten so big. There was a time where it was like a small little, community and stuff. So it's easier to sort of, communicate new ideas to that group. But now, it's a worldwide group. So it's impossible to, transmit that everywhere. But I just wanted to make it clear, I wasn't necessarily bagging directly on journalists. I think they serve an amazing, amazing way of disseminating information. I just meant that, you could Google an article that's written and then, it's not relevant anymore, and then make a decision based on what's in there.
No, I hear you. I want to push back a little bit though, and let me start by asking you a question. Back in the day, when you were actively becoming an OG, but you were just a G. I don't know how it works. Think back to the early days and the way you were breaking into other people's and companies' computers and servers and stuff. How often were you taking advantage, let's say, of just what I would loosely call features that people may or may not have known about or knew how to configure correctly, and so you just got in, versus, I've got to write some sort of script to create an exploit to exploit this weakness that I'm seeing in this executable. I mean, ballpark.
Me? I mean, all right.
Yeah,
so for me personally, all right. First of all, maybe I should remind you, my one of before I switched to Linux, right, and doing up Suns and stuff, and other flavors of Unix, is that my favorite was VAX VMS, which was supposed to be one of the most secure systems, right?
Right.
Including, the Bliss 32 incidents. But anyway, the point is that, I actually personally loved that. I mean, of course, there was a misconfigured stuff. Absolutely. Easy as pie. But a lot of the stuff was very secure. That was part of, I think part of MOD's legend and stuff, certainly, was figuring out quite a few big things. I think so. For me personally, obviously that's why to this day, like I think, and also the other thing too is, to be clear, is that I think it's, this is why I love sneakers, because there's multiple ways in. That's what's so great about having a team in that scenario, right? Both social engineering, all those elements. Like I'll compare it to like hip hop. Like there's multiple elements that make up the culture. It's not one, it's multiple things that make it great. You know what I mean? That like, and this is true of like skateboarding too. It's not just like one thing, there's an aesthetic, there's music, there's a language, there's a blah, blah, blah. And I think, and there's different styles of skateboarding, just like there's different styles of hip hop, which like hip hop would be considered like, both including like not just rap, like graffiti and dancing and stuff, other parts of it. And I think that's true of back then and now. I mean, there's people whose whole discipline is social engineering, which is still a very powerful entryway into getting into places. I mean, huge breaches can take place from a good social engineering, which also, once again, I think is interesting. The idea, I think, and this is tough, companies have bored people faster than they can possibly ever teach them about. You know what I mean?
Well, right. Yeah, I know what you mean, and yes, I mean it's a complicated tapestry. But what I'm trying to get at is, I saw a headline. I think it was just this morning, maybe it was yesterday. Yet another article talking about we're winding down on the year. What were the biggest breaches, and so on and so forth. What were the causes? What are the the top 5 reasons or ways that hackers are breaking in. And still to this day, it's default passwords, weak passwords, guest passwords, trust relationships, misconfigurations, and that's where I agree and disagree that things are changing constantly. I'm like, yeah, they are, but they're not. There are certainly organized crime, nation state things that, organizations, entities out there that are doing really amazingly creative things, on the dark side. And I would certainly get behind, the argument that, while there's pockets of organizations that are dedicated to doing that, primarily in our national defense, and larger companies that are doing it because they're, they've got huge targets painted on their metaphorical backs. The vast majority, I think, of organizations still out there are falling prey to, they're victims of opportunity. Nobody's specifically targeting them. They're just out there trolling to see who's susceptible to whatever exploit or whatever malware package that they're using this week, whether they've created it or not. So I'm very torn on the argument that things are changing quickly. Yeah, they are, but some things, seem to have not changed at all. And I say that as an old timer.
No, I agree. I think that's both equally true. I think that part of it, what I would say to that is that this goes to the heart of what I'm saying about that people get onboarded so fast without attempts to understand that hacker situational awareness. Unless you, in the absence of like an old school, and when I say old school, I mean, I don't even think that applies because I don't consider myself old school. You know what I mean? You just need a day with me on the computer and you'd find out. But that being said, I think that it's not so much. Now I lost my train of thought. I think the part is that you need to learn the hacker awareness, because that is the part of it. Like you having dropped into systems on default, right? Then you versus a checklist. If you actually done it, then the chances are that you would possibly be more aware of it. That's the same thing. Like just when I was like spitballing an idea about like, just internal, yes, there are people who do CTF and go into security, but like obviously, and do, some team games against each other just to learn. But like, there's a lot of security professionals that have never done that. And like, they could benefit from that in the sense, like just setting up a fake network and let them, play through it. You'll see instantly, what they know or what they don't know. If they just go down a checklist or they use an app. But even then, it's still, a lot of people still don't actually have enough field experience to know those kind of things innately. So of course, when they configure it in a rush, they do that. Look, I know mistakes happen. People, push stuff to GitHub. You're in a rush for a commit. You push a password or a username up or, a crypto key. private key. I think that totally could happen. Mistakes happen. But my point is that a lot of people don't have enough hacker situational awareness because that's sort of missing from the pipeline of teaching people about security. That, of course, for them, we set up the default, we did the system, we cranked it out. I installed everything. Oh, but I don't have enough awareness to be like, nothing could stay default, or this new package I installed made an account. I think I do account that to like that kind of paranoia about personal, and maybe paranoia is the wrong word, but my point being that without an absence of knowing or playing around with that stuff or having experienced it, that's off your checklist. So constantly, because you've never suffered the the impact of being dropped in on a default or done it to someone. So how would you possibly know that that's like inviting it in? You're just like, I've set this system up. They done. Come back to it later. I'll change it later.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit for the last couple minutes, and you've presented your case, and I think we mostly agree with you that there's something lacking, there's something missing. We need to relight or reignite the spark of imagination, and getting more and more people to think like a hacker, think the hacker mentality, for whatever that means to whomever would make that statement. How do we get people there? What are some ideas? And this is an open question to anybody, myself included. How do we get people to think differently, think outside the box, think creatively, use their imagination, think deep, dark thoughts? What could go wrong? All of the above. We got nothing?
I can jump in.
John, you sure, jump in, please.
Oh, I shot one already. I just want to, I don't want to hog the whole thing.
Well, that Joe, I think, said she has something.
Yeah, I can jump in. I mean, some of the things that I do are going back to universities to talk to them. So in school, why that curiosity is important and why they should really learn to open their mind and be more inspired about what we do. So, I mean, I try to bring it back, not just, to university, but then back to high school so that they really can kind of develop those skills as early and as often as they can. So when they get in and they start hitting some of those boxes around compliance, they can help be good advocates for why that's still important. So I know, that I don't know if that's controversial or not, but I mean, I think giving them the thought process and feeling like they're more empowered to be inspired and to do some of those things and push the boundaries, I think it definitely helps for some that are trying to stifle the process.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I think that's...
I didn't sell you there.
No, I think that's a key part. It's definitely speaking to people just, pre-security about that stuff. I think, now that I think about it, I think instead of trolling people on Clubhouse, I should try to do like a actual, you know what I mean? Like real, hacker contest event on there and see how that goes.
God forbid, open up your own Clubhouse and say, hey, I'm going to talk about things I care about and think about, and just let people listen, and maybe they'll pick something up.
Yeah, I know, but it's only so many hours. Last time I did a talk on Clubhouse about metaverse and went for 7 hours. I was like, I was working the whole time too. It was kind of ill. But anyway,
that's the hacker trait of not knowing how to walk away and I think man's got to know his limitation.
Yeah. Well, definitely, like I said, I think organizationally you would want to create, scenarios. I think another thing is that I think is fun, which not everybody gets to do. So, all right, so check this out. Imagine a scenario where, and this is important because this is, like I said, related to one of the organization's Visions 2030 that I work with, is the idea of fostering imagination in like taking a second and I don't know if you guys, you guys probably have been involved in something like this where you come in and you think about all the different terrible scenarios you can think of, right? Or different scenarios. And then you just ask people what they think about it. What would they do in that situation? What is their imagination? What could they imagine could happen? And you'd be surprised how just asking someone what they think and empowering them is so powerful. Like, instead of telling them to just do this and get it done, like asking them in a lot of ways is a beautiful way into saying, I appreciate what's in your mind. And if they are blank, then, hey, maybe I can't really rely on this, which is terrible, but it is true. Maybe this isn't the, you know what I mean? What's that? Remember that commercial? The most interesting man in the world. Sometimes I play that shit. He goes,
right.
He goes, find the thing you don't do well, and then don't do that thing. So if a person's mind is blank about it, you know what the deal is. But the bigger point I want to make is that you'd be surprised. So just even running an imagination scenario with like other security people who are open to it. By the way, like I said, some people, their mind, they're better off just on the computer, but you'd be surprised how many people's eyes and mind lights up because they're like, oh shit, I have a place at the table, and they respect my ideas. And you can find out instantly like where they're at, like what they're thinking. I think like running those kind of like work groups would do wonders rather than just saying, here's this. I mean, I think ultimately that's like true no matter what, like everything that I've ever done, or even just traveling, when you ask people what they think and create those scenarios and stuff where they can use their imagination, they're more likely to use it. And like I said, it creates a rapport, because that's like the start of community, when you trust other people to listen to their ideas. And the best part about imagination is that you're not like committed to doing it. So it's like, yo, if you can make it a relaxed environment. So anyway, that's one scenario. And not to mention, then it feels all like cool and like, yo, here I am, we're creating a dream, a dream document and stuff. Yo, this is going to be our little Bible of like, worst case scenarios. It really makes them feel like they're on like a super dope committee, which, like I said, I don't know if you've ever been in like certain kind of like those kind of dream scenario, task force where, you go over all the different things, which once again, when I relate back to the, the 9/11 document about the failure of imagination. Like I said, just allowing people to dream it up will give them, it's so much gravitas that they'll be like, holy shit, I'm in this. And versus like, let's say, I'm a compliance drone. I think, but like I said, I think ultimately you want to figure out different scenarios like that to keep it real fun, to encourage people to make it like, oh shit, this is great. So instead of them like looking on Zillow for a piece of property because they're getting paid so much to just go over a checklist, make it fun. And then you can cope that fun in activities that actually make people inspired to learn and love what they do, and the parts about hacker culture that are amazing, that part where you want to discover shit and you're just like, wow, I came up with this shit, or I found this hole. And, or, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's amazing feeling. I mean, anyone on this Zoom who's, who can admit it, that they dropped into a system unauthorized, knows that feeling's amazing. And, if you could bottle that up and have them feel that too with their own accomplishments, that would be something. And I think there's multiple ways to it. Hopefully I gave a few here. I mean, I don't mind rolling it off the whole clip, but we don't have that much time. But hopefully those were two or three.
No, those are good ideas. I grew up in a generation where I see a lot of analogies in movies and TV shows, and I keep, as you were talking about, giving people opportunities to be creative and to use their imagination. I kept thinking two things. One, Heartbreak Ridge, Clint Eastwood movie, where his platoon has been trained to be attacked by surprise by the other platoon that's supposed to succeed, and they're supposed to die in a loud and grotesque Marine Corps manner. They've been conditioned to lose, in other words, and not think creatively. The other thing is just simply the Karate Kid. I don't think all these exercises need to be strictly based on attack scenarios related to technology and IT and the network. That it's getting people to think outside of the box. The wax on, the wax off, the paint the fence, and they don't know why they're doing it, but it becomes part of their muscle memory to react in a certain way and respond in a certain way. To which I think of all the years that I was involved with youth groups, and we would do sort of brain teaser exercise to get the kids to think and work together, like give them a box of popsicle sticks and tell them they had to build a platform that's like at least 12 inches off the ground, and it's got to support a bowling ball type of thing, and they've got nothing but popsicle sticks and whatever they can scrounge up, or here's a 2x4 and a 3-foot piece of rope, and here's a 6-foot wall. Get your group on the other side. You can't go around it. You got to go over it. Just stupid stuff, but make them think, MacGyver-like, and just be creative like that.
Sure, let me jump in real quick. Like, one thing that I do logistically is I'll have instead of using compliance, they usually have the annual security training, that sort of stuff, where all your employees and engineers need to go to, right? Even your salespeople, all that kind of stuff. I'll put on a training workshop where everybody can participate. I want you at your laptop. You're going to go ahead and look up if your password was pwned on haveibeenpwned.com. And I think that, and one of the things that I do in that is, all right, I'll give 2 or 3 scenarios each slide on how, as an attacker, I would attack that thing, and then start asking people what they might do from their different perspectives, because like your API engineer is going to have something different than like your AWS infrastructure engineer. These sessions go really well so far as inspiring people to think in a certain way. Then maybe 2 or 3 months later, we'll do like our own internal CTF where we invite all the different engineers and stuff. But I guarantee everybody walks away from that kind of training workshop where it's a bit hands-on instead of your typical security training, being a bit inspired to think a little bit differently. But I don't think that but yeah, I think that that's like one good way and one logistical way that I do things to kind of get people into in real life at work into that hacker mindset and thinking about that stuff. And it does make the team stronger, I would say.
Nice.
Yeah,
make a
that's
secret
definitely fun
PDF
stuff.
of their ideas, right? And then you disseminate the PDF, and then it makes them feel.
Well, they start tripping like a little bit, because I'll give the story of, hey, so, if I see a bunch of hash passwords, here's a tool that I would use. Or, hey, if I'm trying to guess a password for an entire org, I do company name. You know what I mean? I would have my search do company name, spring, fall, winter, whatever the season is, and then that year, which usually meshes up with the compliance. Got to change it 4 times, quarterly, got to this, got to that, like all those compliance rules. So I'll tell them what I would do. I'd be like, hey, listen, I'm going to take these compliance rules and try to see if I can find something vulnerable just from that. And then like that particular example gives so many engineers like and practitioners aha moments. Like they're like, oh my God, but it's like simple. It's a simple pen testing thing to me. Right.
Yeah.
So it kind of, but it gets them thinking along those lines, even if they have not put their hands on keyboard to do those specific things, they're like, oh my gosh, that specific thing is a thing. Maybe with my own knowledge, like they'll incorporate something from their own knowledge and they'll come up with something. And then internally, they're coming to me adding stuff to a risk register after that particular workshop. So I think that that's like a really good way for businesses to do that. And I don't think it needs to just be internal security teams that get that kind of stuff, but entire engineering teams, like bring the salespeople, let them think about that kind of stuff too, because you never know.
Yeah. And I think it inspires them and they might have great ideas. I think ultimately, people sometimes, the truth is that most adults, don't get a chance to be imaginative as much as they would like to be or hear their voice heard. You would think, you know what I mean? I'm finally an adult. My voice needs to be heard more, finally it's my chance to speak. And you realize, holy shit, man, I have more chances to speak in grade school than I do now. I think, no, that's great. I think, you should have, and the thing is, you want to have those conversations with everybody and make it fun, not tedious. You want them to leave to come and feel empowered and feel, everybody, because the engineers, seem like the first line that needs to be, security minded, but sometimes it has to go all the way to the mailroom if that even exists anymore. But you know what I'm saying? Right. I feel, everybody in the organization, or institution needs that awareness. I think we all do in our, our daily lives. People get compromised all the time, and having that awareness, it helps everybody, both not only in their personal life, but also in the identity they have within, a given organization who, it's to their own benefit to make sure that the place is secure, because, nothing makes heads roll faster than a huge breach and money drop.
Right. And you wouldn't even believe so at first when I was developing that workshop, I was just like, I don't want anyone falling asleep on me. And security training is typically boring. So by doing that, it was more engaging. But I'll also say this, your salespeople could even know about something in that sales process. It doesn't necessarily need to be tech. Some salespeople and even finance people have identified certain things to me that was in their process of making a sale or, depositing the money or handling the money and accounting, handling money and all that kind of stuff. I found all sorts of stuff just process wise that somebody could SE or figure out just by letting these types of folks that are non-technical kind of get this kind of insight. Think like you want to take the money.
Yeah, no doubt. Somebody in sales might be someone that experienced a social engineering hack, and you're relying on someone else. They may be able to front line on able to tell you that that there is someone actively trying to gain access via that method, it might occur to them oh wow, I think I was engaged in something like that and I gave them information or not. But the point is that I do think that is true. I think you have to engage everybody constantly in those discussions, which once again, I understand, they cost money, time, but ultimately it's worth it, including, like I said, there's also a societal effect. Just, the person goes to another company, then they're a more secure employee, which helps that company be secure, which might, if they got hacked, might have repercussions for the company that they left. They may be connected in ways that are not, what I mean, on paper, on paper not connected, but industry wise, it could be a blow for both. So I think it serves a greater good for all of us to, for that once to go back to your other comment about extending hacker culture, that part of hacker culture. Everybody likes the other stuff, the clothing, the blah, 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 and the talk.
Yeah.
And grandmas say it, you know what I mean? You've been owned or whatever. But like but that part, the security, the mindfulness of it, and I hate to sound all zen, but maybe that's how I got to do it. I feel, you need that hacker awareness and dig into it. Some people have it naturally. They're just naturally, either paranoid or aware. It's true. But like you could teach it too and extend that a bit.
Yeah.
That part of the culture, I think it'll be good just overall. Because let me tell you, if I have another call from a friend, they're like, oh, my Instagram has gotten taken over and is being held. I must have got like so many personal friends call me for that.
Well, John, I'm afraid we've reached that time where we need to start wrapping things up. I do appreciate you coming on again today and just facilitating this conversation. Any final thoughts, parting thoughts?
I want to show you this thing real quick. So in a little bit, I'm going to release NFT of authentic 90s hacking.
And that's why you're into crypto. Okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Maybe should I do a quick sneak peek?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let me see if I could do it. Am I sharing the screen?
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. That is authentic 90s hacking. Yellow pages, the real shit.
That's funny. I have 2 notebooks like this that I found recently.
Nice.
I might need to.
I had to leave all my notes at the office because it was all classified. Oh well.
Well,
Are you gonna auction off the actual notebooks, or are you just gonna take pictures of it? I mean, truly NFT or
separately, and then if you buy it, you can have the option to get the physical page in a, you know what I mean, sent to you.
Gotcha. The values in the NFT. Who wants the original paper? That's so old school.
I know that's old school. But yeah, it's gonna be authentic, and it might actually be too authentic.
That's pretty cool. All right, well, that's gonna wrap us for us today. Programming note: we're off next week because originally it was Security Weekly Unlocked, and we're not going to change that. So we will be back again in 2 weeks, and we're going to be speaking to Ben Carr, who's actually co-host on one of our other shows, Business Security Weekly. I knew Ben we crossed paths back at Tenable. He was the CISO at Qualys for a little bit. He was also at Visa for 4 years. So we're probably going to talk something about payments and PCI and compliance and security, what we do. Enjoy the week off. Hopefully you'll join us on the 16th for Unlocked Virtual, but we'll be back again on December 14th. So until then, stay secure, stay compliant, be creative, use your imagination. We're out.